Welcome. Thanks for being here in Chelan. Brewster, welcome to you all. Thanks for showing up at the Brewster Middle School. And if you're on our online campus tuning in, which you are, backstage I just got 2 texts back to back. The first text said, "The music online is awesome. Tell Matt how good a job he's doing." The other one was, "There's no words for the songs." And I'm like, "Matt, what?" The first text was from my brother. The second was from my mother. So, welcome to my life. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Listen, I've been afraid and scared a few times in my life, and I've been anxious a lot. But in the summer of 1985, I was scared. Because in the beginning of August of 85, I got married to the lovely Darlene. And I thought it was such a good idea. And then once I said I do, I thought, now what am I going to, once you say I do, I'm done. I don't know what to do. We moved, after our honeymoon, we moved to California. She didn't have a job. I had a job that paid about the amount that we were paying for rent each month. We didn't have any idea what we were doing. And so I was a little nervous, but I got terrified when we moved down there. Because in August of 1985 is when Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was killing, raping, and burglarizing people throughout the Southern California area. And to say that I was a little scared is a way understatement. They couldn't catch him. They knew it was him, the serial killer, but his method of operation was he would drive on a freeway, take a freeway exit, burglarize and kill some people right off the exit, get back on and make his. And in LA, you can go anywhere on the freeway system and just be gone. So they didn't know where he lived. They knew that he had some deep, deep problems. We throw out this all the time like, he was a Satan worshiper. He was a Satan worshiper. He would leave blood and pentagrams and everything. He had one burned into his hand. He was evil. So we moved down there. They haven't caught him. We don't have a place to live, the lovely Darlene and I, so we're staying with some of our friends in their condo, and we're sleeping in this upstairs rooms where like these sky windows up there, they don't open or anything. And this is not a overstatement at all. I would lay awake at night looking at that, just knowing he's coming through there anytime. And I have no particular set of skills, right? If he comes crashing through there, what am I going to do? I got my Bible, Darlene's a farm girl. I could have pushed her in front of him, like, get him. I would lay there so concerned, like not sleeping, and then you start sweating, like, what am I going to do? What if he's out there? That's how terrified. And I don't think it was just me. It was the whole Orange County, LA County area. We lived with our friends for about a week or so till we found an apartment. And all this time, the Night Stalker's doing his thing. And my dad and brother drove our stuff down from Idaho, and we were moving into our apartment. We hook up the TV, and we turn it on, and there's a news report that comes out and says, they've caught the Night Stalker. I jumped up and screamed like a millennial girl at a Taylor Swift concert. I was so excited. I mean, I was just like, so relieved that they caught him. He made a huge mistake. He decided to take a nap in somebody's truck in Boyle Heights down in LA. If you've never been to LA, you don't want to go to Boyle Heights if you're a killer. Because they found him, and they almost killed him on the spot. The cops, when they showed up, had to move off the local neighbors because they were beating him up so bad. He was convicted of many crimes, including 13 murders. He died in prison just about 10 years ago or so. I'm not big on people dying or celebrating them, but man, that guy was walking evil. I was just scared to death because there was no plan for it, right? You didn't know when he was going to attack. You didn't know where he was coming. And how he got in without being hurt. It was just like this dark intruder, right? It just did a number on me. I was so excited when they caught him. We're on this series that we started a few weeks ago that we're calling What's Under Your Bed? Like, what's the stuff? What's the stuff that keeps you up at night? What's the thing? And some of us, as soon as we hear that, it's all different for all of us. Some of us, like, we're hiding secrets in our bed. We hope no one ever finds out. Some of us are hiding guilt or shame. But some of us, it's fears and other things. So we said, how do you know that thing that's bothering you or that you're hiding or that you're dealing with is a monster, not just having a bad day? So we said, most of the time, those things, it's more than just, I feel gloomy today, I'm having a bad day. Monsters are persistent and they're pervasive. It keeps coming at you. Like sometimes, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, that thought or that fear or that anxiety, sometimes that's like every 5 minutes, every hour. Some days that you just can't get past it. And other days you think you're just passing, all of a sudden you're out on a jog and all of a sudden something hits you and you're like, and just almost stops you. And it's not just persistent, it's pervasive. Like it affects deep down into your soul. And sometimes without us knowing it, it rolls out and affects the people we love and the people we're closest to because it's undealt with and it just keeps coming after us. Last week we talked about that sometimes the monster under our bed is the difference between an empty life and a satisfied life. The empty life, the thing that's under our bed is you got to have more, you have more, you have to have more, you have to have more, you have to have more. And sometimes you get everything you want and then you want nothing of what you have. So I talked last week that the New Testament says that the way to have a satisfied life is to refocus your attention. Instead of on stuff, to refocus your attention, to refocus your life on Jesus. And as simple as that sounds, there's so much hope and newness and freshness when we do that. So in the next few minutes I want to talk about refocusing your life and the dark intruder of worry. Now, you can call it whatever you want. It may be anxiety for you. It may be stress. I don't know what that is. But that thing that just keeps your life out of focus. Like you want to move this direction. You want to hang out over there. You want to have these relationships. But this thing just keeps coming back on you. For our time in the next few minutes, this is the definition we're going to use. Worry is to be consumed by, to pursue or chase after, to allow your emotions to close in on these unresolved issues until it's all you think about. Don't answer out loud, but is anybody with me? I'm not an expert on a lot of things. Perfect wedding ceremonies, obviously. When the hot light is on at Krispy Kreme Donuts, I have an app, and worry. I'm really good at it. This is probably one of my biggest battles. It goes along with being an 8 Enneagram. I like to be in control. When I'm not in control, I keep chewing it over in my mind constantly until I think I found a solution in my mind. The problem with that is a lot of times there's no solutions. Let me share with you a little insight. What happens to me is I get, when I'm really worried, and I'm not trying to be, but I get really self-centered. Because I think about me and my struggles and what's going on. And then I start missing out on things around me. It's tough for me to be in one place and enjoy it because I'm always thinking, okay, what do I have to do next? Where do I have to be? Where do I have to go? Then you throw in something that's really a friend who's sick, a relative who's struggling. And then it's just like, oh man, it's just captivating. And the tendency is to kind of like concentrate on myself, forget about people around me, and even in the profession I'm in, I miss out on what God is trying to do in my life. Let me share a little bit of you with the worry pie. This isn't me. This is research that's way beyond. This ain't a church thing or a Christian thing. It's just a thing. The worry pie is this. 40% of the stuff we worry about in our life never happens. Who's with me? Like when someone says, hey, worry has never done any good. And I'm like, you're wrong. Most stuff I've worried about never happened. So worry must be a successful way to deal with stuff. 40% of stuff we worry about never happens. 30% of stuff that we're concerned about was in our past. So 70% of the things that consume our mind with the dark intruder of worry never happen currently. Never come down, or they're in the past. So then that leaves us, I think, 30 more percent. Homeschoolers, is that right? Marcia? Correct. All right. Then there's another 12% of criticism, is what people say about us or treat us. And we don't have any control over that. Then there's the 10% of our health. Like if you've got some health concerns or something's going on, 10% of our worries are that. But guess what? The more you worry about your health, the worse it is for your health. That's not a Bible thing, that's just a thing. So that leaves one last thing, and that is the worries described as legitimate or real. So don't check my math, but 10%, about 1 out of 10 things that we worry about, never happen and we have no control over. Can you imagine? What if you could eliminate your worry by 40%, 70%, 80%? Think how free you would be. Think what that would do to your relationships. Think what it would do to my relationships. So, Jesus had a lot to say about worry. Why do you think he talked about worry? Because he knew we would worry. We have lots of different places in the New Testament where Jesus speaks. We have a handful of major sermons, but over all the sayings and teachings and sermons of Jesus, there's not a whole library of stuff. So when he would speak to large groups, what he chose to speak on had to be incredibly important. So in what we consider maybe his most important sermon, but certainly his longest talk, we call the Sermon on the Mount, and it happens, and Matthew gives us the details in his biography of Jesus in the book of Matthew in the New Testament. And basically, Jesus, his posse, disciples, people who liked him, other people who were interested in him, and people who hated him, were all there. And it was probably at the side of a hill. They probably sat down in the grass. It was probably a nice day. And Jesus began his sermon. And the way he began his sermon was he said, listen, you all, blessed are the meek. Blessed are the people who struggle. Blessed are peacemakers in a time where there is no peace. And he starts with listen, I know where you all are coming from. The number one thing about public speaking, know your audience. That's exactly what he did. He knew who he was talking about. So when we pick up in the middle part of the sermon, it seems like Jesus is being insensitive. But he's already set it up. He knows who he's talking to. He knows that the majority of the people that he's talking with live in their own country, dominated by another country. They have no freedom and there are no rights on their own except for what Rome tells them to do. Most of them are excluded by the religious and temple system. Most of them have not measured up to where they want to be and where they want to go, and it is a difficult life. So when Jesus, in the middle of a sermon, says, therefore, because of all the stuff I'm talking about, I tell you, do not worry. Be happy. It just seems so insensitive, like these guys are way down. And Jesus says, hey, stop it. Here we go to your doctor, like my chiropractor, Dr. Simmons. And I'm like, hey, Dr. Simmons, every time I do this, it hurts. He says, well, don't do that. Right? You go see your psychiatrist. Man, I'm really struggling. I'm really sad. Well, stop being sad. I mean, that's not a good remedy. So it seems like Jesus being insensitive, but he's just setting it up because he's going to say, listen, You don't have to continue to allow the dark intruder of worry to invade your soul. Let's make a deal. Let's make a trade. I got a deal for you. We're going to trade your worry for something better. And Jesus sets up, and I would encourage you, whether you're a churchy person, not a churchy person, whatever you are, I would encourage you to listen to the words of Jesus because they're radically helpful. He says, therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body or what you will wear. Like all the normal stuff. He says, I know you have two deep concerns. Let me address them. He says, first of all, don't worry about the basics. Now, most of us, not all of us, and not everyone listening, not everyone in all our communities, but most of us didn't wake up this morning worried about what we were going to eat or what we would drink. All right? For some of the people he was talking to, those were critical, immediate needs. And there are some of those in our life. I'm not discounting that. But for most of us, the basics, we have the basics. But for us, we're talking about the stuff that we're concerned about when we wake up first thing in the morning. How am I going to get my kids through school? How am I going to make the mortgage? How am I going to pay my rent? Am I going to have a job next month? How do I pay off my credit cards? What about the safety of my kids? What about the health of my family? Like they're just basic stuff. And Jesus says, don't worry about that basic stuff. I've got a better deal for you. And then he says, and don't worry about your image. He's referring to your house and clothes and what advancing and promotion and what other people think about you. We would never say any of this stuff out loud, but sometimes we stop and in our quietest moments we think stuff like this. Will anybody recognize me and who I am and what I've done? Am I ever going to get married? Will I ever get asked out on a date? Can we ever get pregnant? Will I ever make the sale? What do my friends think of me? We can't even afford counseling. And all these levels consume us, and they're deep. One is basic stuff that most people are concerned about, and the other stuff is image and promotion and our reputation. And Jesus says, you don't have to worry about that. Is life, he says, is life more important than food and the body more important than clothes? He gives one difficult question, and it's really pretty pointed. Is life more than food? I think the answer is yes. I mean, what you enjoy in life, who you enjoy in life, isn't it more than the stuff you have or the person you hope people think about in your reputation, in your goals and achievements? Isn't the good stuff of life relational? Isn't the good stuff in life the stuff that affects your soul deep down? And most of us know, even if you're a middle schooler here, you know that when you're doing stuff that's surface, it feels good to buy the new thing and get that thing and have that. But deep down in your soul, it's not changing. And there are times where even the youngest of people to the oldest of people think, all right, this is what I was made for. Because this affects me deep inside, and it goes way against basic needs and image. Listen, if you knew that in your heart that this stuff is not life, then why would you commit so much time, energy, and emotion to it? I don't know if it's the American way of living, but all the stuff we give most of our time, energy, and money to is not the stuff that is filling up our soul and filling up the souls of our kids and people around us that we love the most. So they're sitting out there on the side of a hill. Jesus is doing his thing. People are leaning in because they are worried and they are concerned. And Jesus gives these two creative illustrations because he's a good speaker. He looks around and he's like trying to connect their environment with his words. And he says, look at the birds. Much like Bob Marley. There's 3 little birds sitting over here. Bob Marley's song, 3 little birds, don't worry. But I think it's going to be all right. Same message of Jesus. Just Jesus had less weed smoking than Bob Marley. Jesus did it without the aid of drugs. Bob Marley had a little help. Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow and reap. They're not working hard. They're not concerned. They don't store away in barns. And yet, even though they're just birds, your heavenly Father still feeds them. He said, the birds equal the basics in life. That's God's design. Whether you want to talk evolutionary design or creative design or theistic evolution, whatever, that's God's design. The birds get fed. The birds are alive. Then he says, aren't you much more valuable than the birds? Yes. If there is a God, creator God, who loves you and provided a solution to your emptiness through Jesus Christ, doesn't he care more about you than the birds? I'm not saying the birds aren't important. I love the birds. I just killed a baby quail the other day and was not excited about it. The mom just flew across and the 12 babies flew with her. I'm like, Mom, that's on you, Mom. I couldn't do anything. Yeah, birds are important, but so much more important are you. God cares so much more about you than the birds. And the birds get their needs met. Jesus isn't done. He says, which of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? It's ineffective, trust me. Worrying produces nothing. Now, I'm not saying to be irresponsible and don't care about anything and don't have a plan, and I'm not saying that. But worrying and chewing it over and not being able to release it and not letting go and thinking it all depends on you and the weight falls on you, that is ineffective. It doesn't work. So he's not done. Why would you worry about clothes? Now you don't have to worry about clothes, food, but don't worry about clothes. Why? Because Jesus looks around and says, hey, check out the flowers. See how the flowers of the field grow? They don't labor and spin. They don't worry. They're not all stressed out. Did I tell you, not even Solomon, the richest guy in the world and the greatest kingdom, in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. Like Jesus. Not only do the birds get taken care of, but flowers. Flowers equals your image. I don't think you can tell me, you master gardeners, I don't think there's a competition between the tulips and the roses. I don't think the gardenias look at the daisies and say, you're so plain. I think there's a sense that this is who I am. This is what I was created to be. And a field of wild flowers that Jesus was talking, and people looked around and said, that you're starting to make sense, Jesus. God takes care of the birds. Hold on now. If you've heard this before, hear it again for the first time. God takes care of the birds. He takes care of the flowers. He can certainly take care of you. And a lot of us, especially who've been to church a while, we know that here. But it doesn't get down into our heart and soul. Trust me, I know that. We have two enormous problems that Jesus addresses. First, our faith is misplaced. We have faith. You may have come this morning, you're not a regular attender, or this religion or Christianity stuff is new to you. You have a faith. It's just misplaced. When I struggle with worry, my faith is misplaced. I have a faith. It's just in the wrong place. Jesus says, if that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow's thrown into fire and gone, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? And he's not saying, you're horrible, you lack faith. The Greek term is like I don't know how you'd say it in Spanish. It's like little mija or little papi. You're just like, he's being super gentle, like, listen, of course, if God clothes all the flowers and takes care of the birds, won't he take care of you? And I know you have such little faith, but you don't have to. Ask this question a lot. How much faith does it take to trust God? And the answer is, as much faith as you got right now as you sit here. you're in Chelan, sitting in Brewster, you're online, like, yeah, that's enough. And we do have little faith because our faith is misguided. We trust ourselves because we don't trust God, and no wonder we panic when that happens. My faith gets misplaced in me, and I ain't God. Second one, not only is our faith misplaced, then our focus is misguided. What I concentrate on, what I think on, what I plan on. Jesus says, don't worry. Don't worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? Get this. For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. And pagans, he's not picking on people. He's saying pagans, people who don't believe in God, run after this stuff, get stressed out after this stuff, worry about this stuff, can't sleep over this stuff. And he's saying, don't run after means to hotly pursue, to desire, to go after. And he said, listen, people don't believe in God, act that way. But your Father, your God, he already knows. Now listen, I'm a better non-worrier than I used to be, thanks to Celebrate Recovery. And the place I've got to, and I do this all the time, where I say, okay, that's not me, that's God's job. I can't do that. God, do your thing. Now, I may do that every 5 minutes, but the freedom to know that it's not all on me, I'm telling you, I wish I would have learned it a long, long time ago. Somewhere along the line, I picked up that if I'm going to be okay, if I'm going to succeed, if ministry is going to be successful, the people around me are going to be happy, it all depends on me. And that is a horrible way to live. So there's this moment where instead of running, I stop and say, my Father God knows. And he's better and he's bigger than me. So as we wrap up, let me give you one thing. Instead of a life out of focus, which is worried, let me give you a life in focus, which is to seek. Great word that Jesus uses. He says, but seek. Seek first God's plan, God's kingdom, and his righteousness, and all this other stuff will be given to you as well. When you seek out God first, when you desire his way first, you're going to get everything coming to you, and all this other stuff that we worry about, it's already there. God's going to take care of that. When we move from worrying to seeking, that's when our anxiety starts to come down. When we invest in God's way first, and you're going to have to stop yourself. And it's all mental stuff, right? You have to stop yourself and say, okay, am I going to do it my way or am I going to do it God's way? I may not even know what God's way is, but I'm going with you, God. In the midst of your personal anxiety, ask yourself, what can I do to further God's kingdom and God's agenda instead of mine? And when you do that, you get everything back that you desire as well. When we talk about seeking, definition of seeking is this: to focus on, to concern yourself with, to place high priority. I want to be concerned about what God's concerned about. Very difficult. But in this process, as you seek, you make this trade that God offers. You trade your uncertainty for hope. Hope in this moment, hope for tomorrow, hope for way down the road. And like you look around, you look at your situation. In fact, you said, Kyle, as soon as you said worry and said not to worry, and now you're talking about hope, if you gave me the mic and let me come on stage and I told you my story, when I get done talking, you'd probably say, oh yeah, you should be worried. Like if I knew your story, if we all knew what you've been through, and I'm not minimizing that. Some of you are in the middle of stuff. Some of you are just entering stuff. Some of you are on the other side of stuff and can look back and you're enjoying this talk. But the fact is, in the middle of uncertainty. Jesus says there's a way to have hope and be certain that God is still in charge, even though there's pain in the journey and the progress. I'd rather trade that in. I'd rather trade my concern, my worry, my angst. And as I've done that, man, God always comes through. I don't always get what I want, and my prayers don't get answered the way I want. But there's always this consistent hope or consistent way that God carries me through it. It's a personal hope where as I stop and acknowledge who God is and God's the Father, I'm going to seek after his kingdom before mine. And then there's this public hope, y'all. Have you ever met someone who's a follower of Jesus and they're going through just a horrible, difficult time and their faith remains intact? And even though through their tears and their pain, they still say, we're so thankful that Jesus is carrying us through it. When you see that, what do you do with that? People lean in. When you have hope in spite of your circumstances, when you have hope above your worry and anxiety, people who don't have a faith in Jesus look at you and say, what is that? And they lean in. So as we wrap up, let me give you 3 next steps. We always do some next steps. When you entered in Brewster and Chelan, we handed you a handout, and inside there's this, I think it's blue today. Is it blue? It was white last week. It's a blue card. And if you're new, if this is the first time with us in Brewster and Chelan, we're so glad. Could you fill that out and let us know that you're here? But then also, if you have a prayer request or concern, you can write that on there also. If you're viewing online, you can go to the app or you can go to our website. There's a digital card. But also on the blue card are 3 steps because we want you to be able to hear something and then put it into action. And the blue card tells us, yep, there it is. You can turn that in. We'll pray for your decision. But let me give you 3 next steps. First of all, plan your worry time. This isn't necessarily a Jesus thing. This is just a psychological thing, a counseling thing, a psychiatrist thing. Like if you want to worry, okay. Worry from 8 a.m. to 8:30. Really, I'm not being smart at all. Sit down and just worry. What is it? Just go, just dive into your worry. 8:30, set a timer, 8:30. Gets to be 9 o'clock and you're like, oh, I'm going to worry. Nope, you already had your worry time. I mean, sometimes just getting at, you know what? Sometimes in your worry time, if you're with someone you trust, not Facebook, not Instagram, not the TikTok formerly known as Twitter, not that, not none of that, but you have someone, you can worry out loud to someone you trust also. Listen, that's not a bad thing. As long as you decide, I'm going to open the door to this worry, spending 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, what it is, and then I'm kicking him out because I'm done. And guess what? Do that for a few weeks. I bet you in a month, you won't need 30 minutes for your worry. 2, pray your worry thoughts. You got to let God know what's going on. I mean, if you're anxious, if you're mad, if you're concerned that God's not coming through on your timetable, that's good stuff to tell God. If you don't think you can pour out your heart, pour out your soul to God, you haven't read the Psalms in the Old Testament, where David just blasts God. There are times where some of the prophets in the Old Testament are like, God, what are you doing? I would understand if we had done something wrong, but we're going through this painful time and we haven't done anything wrong, and we don't really like what you're doing. What about you? God's a good place. You know what? If you make this a daily habit, now you're in the habit of meeting with God every day. I'm just going to start my day by telling God what's up. Okay. He would love to. I just talked to him this morning. He'd love to meet you tomorrow. Pray your worry thoughts. Get them out to God. Let him know where you're at. And sometimes, trust me, it may be the same worry thought for years. And you're going to have to keep saying, here it goes again. Here's again. Like, I don't know the answer to this. But when I pray and ask God for something, and it's the same prayer I've asked for 30 plus years, Like, sometimes I think, God, I already asked you. I know you never forget, so I'm not asking again. But the process of asking and telling God again is a process of staying reconnected and reminding myself that God is in charge. He wants what's best for me, and I'm going to leave it with him again. Finally, last step is pursue your worried town. We started Real Life about 11.5 years ago here in Chelan, 5.5 years ago in Brewster. And the reason we did, because we're not trying to grow a church, we're trying to reach a community. We're trying to take the love and truth of Jesus into people's life who up until that time had no place to go or chose not to go anywhere. And we want them to experience the hope that comes through knowing Jesus. Now, you're here this morning at either campus or listening in online, and you don't know Jesus. This stuff is all new to you, that you wish you had a Heavenly Father that you're confident who cared about you, that you wanted a hope that goes beyond your pain, that in spite of your family upbringing, in spite of the conditions that you're in, you would love to have this certainty of hope in the midst of just chaos. Well, that's your decision today. If you came here and you're like, I'm not yet a follower of Jesus, maybe this is your day. Maybe right where you're seated, you can say, listen, I know I'm not perfect. I know there's a holy God. And I need a Savior. I need a rescuer. And I choose to believe in faith that Jesus is that person. And I choose to put my faith in you today, Jesus. Now, you can do that and make that commitment exactly where you're at. If you are here today and you're a follower of Jesus, then it is your duty, your calling, your privilege to share a hope with people in your community and in your circles who are without hope. And outwardly or superficially, they got it all going on, but deep down in their soul, they're searching and lacking. God's agenda is to seek and save those who are far from him. Jesus said that's the reason he showed up. He didn't show up for the people that were well. He showed up for the sick people. Jesus said he showed up to seek and save the lost. Do you know that? Listen, if you're a follower of Jesus, when you care about people who are far from God and offer them hope that comes from faith in Jesus, you are in the same business and partnering with Almighty Creator God. You stand hand in hand with the same mission. Listen, you're like, I don't know what to do. Then just invite someone to come to church here at Real Life with you next week. In Brewster, Chelan, there's all kinds of people in your community that lack hope. And if you're like, I don't know what to say to them, just invite them to come. Same way here in Chelan. If you're online, I guess, and you're watching at home, invite your neighbor over to your house to watch. It's the easiest way. And I love this. We talk about it all the time. When someone says, hey, I don't really like church, then you can say, great. Because the church I go to, Real Life, is a church for people who don't like church. Come on, that's perfect for you. I love this one too. I'm not really into organized religion. Oh, Kyle is so unorganized, you're going to feel so great about it. There's no organization of religion at all there. Listen, you don't have to go stand on a corner and shout at people with a blowhorn. There's people in your circle that lack hope. With a simple offering of a meal, a conversation, or an invitation to show up here is a great way to begin reaching a community, a town without hope.